Hey adventurers, so today is going to be another book tag. This one is the super random books tag, or maybe book tag, I'm not entirely sure. Either way though, I saw this one on Lynette Reed's channel. I'll have that one linked in the description, that channel linked in the description, and if you're not subscribed to her already, you should definitely do so. She puts out some great content. So, getting right into these questions. I don't remember who created this. Let's get right into these questions. They're kind of super random, most of them, and that's kind of what drew me to this question. So, color crazy. Pick a color that matches your emotions when reading your favorite book. So, my favorite book, Lord of the Rings, or The Hobbit, or Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a lot of similarities in those things with the color green. Didn't grab it and bring it in here with me, but my super nice hardcover edition of The Hobbit is a green hardcover, and it's very pretty, very nice. Green is a very important color to Lord of the Rings. It's also for Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Green's a very important color to that one as well. So I wouldn't say that green's my favorite color, but that's kind of the first color that comes to mind when I think of my favorite books. Favorite movie. Pick the best book to movie adaptation. A lot of people would probably say Lord of the Rings, but Lord of the Rings tells a very different story from the books. The movies tell a very different story, and the movies are phenomenal, absolute masterpieces, but it's not, in my opinion, the best adaptation of the books. But so I had to think a little bit about it, and I ended up going with The Princess Bride, because The Princess Bride, the book, is very, 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 very good, but the movie's better. There's some things that the movie could have done to be a little bit more faithful to the book, but it still doesn't change the fact that it basically tells the exact same story, as well as tells it better. So yeah, that's my answer for that one. Favorite song at the moment. Say your favorite song at the moment and pick a book that you feel is the same as your favorite song. So kind of favorite song at the moment would, this is because I recently watched Top Gun Maverick, and in that movie the song I Ain't Worried by OneRepublic is played, and so that kind of has gotten stuck in my head now, and that's kind of at the moment my favorite song. I don't tend to have favorites, so it's just at the moment it's the one that goes through my head the most. And so I couldn't really think of a book specifically that I felt gave me that same vibe. So I thought about the movie, and I thought about Top Gun Maverick, and then I thought about Top Gun, the first one. And I was like, as I was watching Top Gun, I was like, this is basically just Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. And so that's kind of the book that I chose. I guess I should say Skyward by Brandon Sanderson is basically just Top Gun, because Top Gun was first. But whatever the case, that's the book that I chose. It's probably not the best answer, but that's the best I can come up with at the moment. Book slump. Name a book that put you into a reading slump. I don't know that I really have a great answer for this, because I don't tend to do reading slumps. It's usually if I slow down my reading, it's because other things are getting in the way, more so than because I am tired of reading or I'm in a reading slump or anything. So the answer that I put down is She by H. Rider Haggard. This is not a book that I disliked. It's not even a book that really made me stop reading or put me into a slump or anything like that. It's just one that I wasn't getting along with, and I couldn't get into it enough to just continue through it. So I set it aside. Eventually I'll come back to it and probably reread what I started from the beginning and up to where I'm at, and then continue through. But at the moment, that's really the best answer that I have for this one. Book shopping. Name a book that you spent way too much money on. So my answer for this is Dawn Shard by Brandon Sanderson. Dawn Shard is a novella. It's about that big, something like that, and 150 pages maybe, something like that, and you still spend like 25 bucks on it or something crazy. And it probably doesn't deserve to be that high of a price, but it's what it is. I don't even know if I ended up paying that much for it from where I bought it, but whatever the case, I feel like it costs more normally than it should. Empty pockets. Name a book that you really want, but you don't have the money to pay for it. So I don't really have a specific answer for this one. I tend to, if I want a book, I'll buy it. I'm not in a place where I'm so tight for money that I can't buy books if I don't want them. But at the same time, I'm not the type of person who just goes out and spends money and buys books all the time. That being said, the books that I tend to really want that would be expensive enough for me not to have enough money for would be special editions of some sort. So take this edition of Lord of the Rings, for example. This one's like 80 bucks or 75 bucks normally or something like that, and that's more than I would be really willing to spend on most books, unless it's a special edition, like super nice edition of Lord of the Rings, or a leather bound edition of a book that I really like or something like that. So that's kind of my answer, would be a maybe like a leather-bound edition of one of Sanderson's novels, either Elantris or Warbreaker or one of the Mistborn Era 1 books. Those are really the only books of his that, well, and the first 2 Stormlight books. But those are really the only ones that I'm just like, I would absolutely love to have these in a leather-bound because they're my favorite of Sanderson's books. Then, let's see. The Golden Trio. Name a group of friends besides Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ron Weasley. So, there's lots of ones that you could choose, lots of different friend groups that you could choose. I ended up going with the 4 hobbits from Lord of the Rings. It's technically 5 because there's another one that gets left behind in the Shire, but that's Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, and then the 5th would be Fatty Bolger or Frediger Bolger, and I really like that friend group. It's super good. If I were to stick to a trio, I would say the 3 hunters, so Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas. I really don't need to say more. They're just all such great characters, and it's Lord of the Rings, it's my favorite and everything like that. Memories. Name your top 3 favorite books. So this one, I don't know that I have a great answer for this one. I have some answers for sure, and we'll go through them. So The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. Depends day by day which of those 2 is my favorite. Generally, I think it ends up being The Hobbit more than Lord of the Rings, but they're definitely both there. So that's my answer for number 1, and then I wanted to say Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, but that's not really a book, that's more of like a story. So I substituted that out with Mistborn, The Final Empire. So those 2 kind of switch places, and then number 3 would be The Giver or Gathering Blue. The Giver was one of my favorite books growing up, and then Gathering Blue I read a little bit older, a couple of years ago, and I loved it more than I loved The Giver, but I couldn't love it without loving The Giver. And it's also because it's a book 2, you can't really, it's kind of hard to put a book 2 on a top favorite series list. So that's, again, basically I slipped in 6 answers here. Never-ending TBR. Name a book that you want to add to your never-ending TBR. So usually when I have a list on my phone in my notes that I just, anytime I think of a book or see a book or hear of a book or anything that I think sounds interesting or that I might want to read, I'll write it down. So I have a constant list of that's pretty up to date with all the books that I want to read pretty much. And so I don't really have a great one that I can say I want to add to my TBR because that is my TBR. But if I were specifically talking about my physical TBR, I would say The Legend of Blackjack by A.R. Witham. This is a self-published fantasy, YA, portal fantasy type story, for what I understand, and it sounds amazing and it sounds right up my alley, and I just don't have it. I haven't gotten it yet. I haven't bought it, haven't spent the money to buy it yet. I want to and I need to, and I would love to support the author, but I haven't gotten to it yet. So that's probably my best answer for this at the moment. Oops. Name a book that is popular that you haven't read yet. There's a lot of popular books that I haven't read yet. The first author that came to my mind is Stephen King. And so I was thinking, well, what's one of his most popular books? And that would be It by Stephen King. So that's the answer that I've got for this one. Rainbow. Name a book that gives you all the feels. I'm not a terribly emotional reader, but Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, those are probably some of the only books that I have cried in at the ends of, and it was probably just my first reread of it, or my first read of, not going back and forth through them the several times that I have now. So that's probably my best answer for that. Movie night. Name a book to movie series or book to movie adaptation that you've binge watched. The best answer that I have for this, because I don't tend to binge watch things, is Harry Potter, and that's because when I first watched them, I hadn't read the books yet, but I bought all 8 of them, and then we watched them all in less than a week's time, and it was a couple of them we watched 2 or 3 a night, and so that's the best that I could give you. Best answer that I could have for that one. Sweet but sour. Name a book that is sweet but is sour in some way. And I don't understand exactly what this question is getting at, so I went with Redwall because there's sweet foods and there's sour foods talked about in Redwall all the time, so that's my answer for that. And then the last question is no spoilers, please. Name a book that you've been spoiled for. I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I'm sure there are plenty of them, and I'm sure if I just were to actually go through and look at every book in the bookshelf, I could come up with a couple of them. But I off the top of my head, I can't think of any, and that's fine. Most of the time, if I'm spoiled about a book, it's either a book that I don't care about being spoiled about, or one that I'll have forgotten by the time that I read it. So, because I wasn't paying enough attention to the spoilers as it was. So that's kind of what it ends up being with me. So those are my answers to the Super Random Books tag. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday. We have our social medias linked in the description down below. Thanks for watching. Stay warm.